third grade, I saw a boy cut a hole in the middle of his shirt. I never really understood why he did this, but then I realized that he couldn't control his actions because he had ADHD. So to start off my presentation, I'd like to ask all of you who has ADHD in here. Okay, so quite a lot of you. So you would know that there's a really hard line between being able to focus and having trouble with constant stimulation and constant energy, which also in turn makes it impossible to focus. So, most people think that it only occurs in children. It does not, however. Most people do not realize that it occurs in adults too, except for the fact that adults have an easier time managing it because they've dealt with these symptoms their whole life. So there are two types. There's ADD, which is just having a hard time paying attention, and then there's ADHD. ADHD is having a hard time paying attention and being hyperactive, with symptoms such as impulsivity, interrupting more, not being able to finish a task, procrastination, not seeing how your actions affect other people. So these are because of two causes mostly, which is environmental and genetic causes. There's also a multitude of differences in an ADHD person's brain and a person without ADHD. And one of these, which I'm going to say from neurogenesis.com, is the neurotransmitters in the brain. Now, most people don't know what that is, so I'm just going to take a second to explain it. Neurotransmitters basically they submit messages from one neuron to another neuron in the brain, and that releases a certain amount of genetic hormones. So that releases a certain amount of genetic hormones and chemicals. But in an ADHD person's brain, which is, I think, on slide 3, yes, it is slide 3. So in an ADHD person's brain, as you can see if you look at your handout over here, there are less neurotransmitters than a normal person's brain. Just something to make you all aware of. So in addition, because it's genetic, it lasts the whole lifetime. Your symptoms just become more manageable. So moving on, actually no, I'm going to stay here. So how does this affect you and change the brain? So another thing in the brain that's different is called dopamine. And dopamine, what it is, basically, is that it sends messages from one part of the brain to another and impacts things like your mood and your learning. Another thing impacted by this is DRD4. But what we have found out through scientific discoveries is that with innovation and with medicine, which is on slide 4 of your handout if you look at it, we are able to have DNA testing to figure out what part of the brain it's specifically in and find medicines that work for different people. So, every medicine does not work the same. Some can make it worse and make you more anxious, make you not feel good, or have a stomachache, or vomit, or have headaches, whatever it might be, and some just increase the amount of ADHD that you have. But with these medicines, some of them do increase dopamine, which is very helpful. So when considering meds, which is also on slide 4, you need to figure out the side effects of your medicine. And by the way, the dopamine part is by WebMD, 2014. So with the right meds, though, you'll be able to become more functional, not procrastinate as much, not interrupt as much. Just be able to do daily things. So how does this affect which takes them a longer period of time when they're working to do a task. Now, when doing a task, obviously, then they don't complete it the way that they're supposed to complete it because they have a harder time finishing that task. In a social aspect, people with ADHD don't realize how their actions and what they say and their emotions affect other people's emotions, actions, and what they say, which comes into the whole aspect of impulsivity in a person with ADHD and realizing that level of impulsivity. So, one of the last things I'm going to touch on is, so how do you know with this if you have ADHD or not? Which, if you look at slide 5, when we talk about the disorders, this will help. So knowing this, you would realize that with ADHD, as I talked about, sort of, you have other disorders such as anxiety, such as a learning disability, such as depression or OCD.
Can you go outside? Go ahead, I'm listening.
Oh, or OCD. So this would mean that you should test yourself for ADHD. And most people's parents would know that their child has ADHD at around the age of 4. In addition, it's monitored by the severity of the child's behavior or hyperness or anything in general. And it's also monitored by, which is basically actually what I just said, never mind, the severity of their life. So knowing this, it proves that it is not a life or death situation, but it is a disorder or a problem that affects most of the country as a whole. In addition, the other disorders that come with ADHD make this worse as a problem. So if you know how to deal with it and you know what it is and how your actions affect other people, it's the first step in figuring out how to fix your ADHD. It also makes you able to manage your ADHD, which is why this is of value to you as the audience. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Are there any comments or questions? And my bibliography side is on slide 7.